I guess I'll just start by thanking the Subiaco Library, Carmel and Alex, for hosting such events. It really is fantastic to partner up with the Subiaco Library with their primary focus on young people and children, which is ours. So I think it's a no-brainer that the two of us kind of partner up and connect and host such events. And it's great that you get such amazing people here. Like last week we were here with Sean Tam, and this week you're here with me. Really? really love. And we've got kids. But thank you for putting on the drinks and the best pizza in town.
Yeah.
We thought about not having pizza tonight, but Alex said we couldn't possibly not have pizza because you like it so much.
Yeah, thank you. Look, as Carmel said, I'm here with Finegan Kruckemeyer. We're so lucky to have Finn over here and to be able to produce his play, the Australian premiere of This Girl Laughs, This Girl Cries, and This Girl Does Nothing. It is incredible that at the age of 31, you have had 52/53 at this moment commissioned plays. If I do my maths right, that's about 5 a year you're writing. That's quite outstanding. And you won you were the recipient of the Sydney Myer Creative Fellowship. And This Girl Laughs won the Rodney Seaborn Award. So you've got quite a few awards and fellowships and 52 commissioned plays. How did that all happen? Let's go to the beginning of it. And talk me through, I guess, the early formative years for you and how you developed as a playwright.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for chatting with me and thank you for hosting. It's really nice. So I started off, I moved to Australia with my family.
So the next one... Just warming it up. The thing you should know about Finegan too is he blushes.
Am I doing it now?
Yes, you are. But I find that so endearing in a person. Now let's go over to Ireland. Where the little lad started his work.
Okay, alright, here we go. Moved here when I was 8, still blushing. When I was 8 years old, my family moved across, and my sister and I came with. And
from Ireland?
Yes, that's right. And straight away, I got completely immersed in the youth theatre scene. I just spoke with my parents about this the other night, and they chose Adelaide because it had quite a good reputation as the festival state, and you know it was the Dunstan era had kind of set in progress all of these great funding opportunities for the arts, particularly in youth theatre, which continues to this day. And so coming there as an 8-year-old was fantastic because there was amazing opportunities for young people who wanted to make art or be involved or learn about it, and I ticked all 3 boxes. And so I went through a youth theatre thinking I was an actor, and then got into some kind of teaching of theatre sports and stuff like that, and all the time was writing anyway. It was just something that I've always loved, and initially it was for nobody, just for myself really, and then slowly I started wondering how could I share it with people, and so I did some very dodgy formative first things, you know, which proved to be important because of course it's all just steps and an evolution, and so you've got to do the kind of less formed stuff because they give the clues to what will come next, I think. And then that youth theatre, Urban Myth Theatre of Youth, when I was 20 years old, 11 years ago, 10 and a bit years ago, gave me my first commission for When the Penny Drops, which was a play about youth gambling issues, people addicted to gambling as young people. And
at what age do they start gambling? Like as young as?
Really, yeah, from when you can get into pubs really in terms of pokies, so 18-year-olds with quite full-blown pokey addiction. And so we had a counsellor come in who works with people in that area, and he sat the ensemble. It was amazing. He sat us all in a circle and he just went around and he didn't talk about pokies or addiction or anything for the whole 2 hours. He just spoke to each of us and made us cry. He just took us to a point where he broke each of us. And then after 2 hours of this collective sorrow and emoting, he said, that's why people gamble. Because they have something they hold, which is an internal tragedy to them, which can bring them to tears, but they have no way to share that. They don't have a theatre group to be a part of. You know, maybe they feel they have to keep it in instead of getting it out, and so they gamble. And my God, it was just amazing. So that was the first thing I had to write about, to try to convey in some small way this amazing cathartic experience he'd just taken us all through. And I didn't succeed at all, I mean.
How old were you then?
20.
20.
So, but yeah, in terms of, I write less issue-based theatre these days, but I think still in terms of one of the tenets of theatre being, you know, to try to play a game of emotional back and forth, of, you know, setting in motion the triggers which might take people in their own way to a point of catharsis or sharing or considering. You know, that's something that remains.
Right. So, I'm just going to go back a little bit, because it is extraordinary that you have had 52/53 commissioned plays at this age. So, and to write 5 plays a year, and I want to go back a little bit to when you were in Ireland as a child. Do you have many memories of Ireland? Because for me, some of the greatest storytellers come from Ireland. You know, they're brilliant storytellers, and in their music and their singing, and I'm sure that has something to do with it. Not only that, I would like to point out that Finegan Kruckemeyer is probably the best name ever for an author to write plays for young people. We've got Hans Christian Andersen, and then maybe we'll have Finegan Kruckemeyer. I don't think they're too far from it, if I may say so. So, talking about those really early years in Ireland, and did you kind of grow up with storytelling and?
I mean, what was wholly present, and that came very much from my parents, was that my mum went through kind of art college earlier in life, so she was running workshops in the community. You know, she was working with children, setting up parades, and I was always a part of that. So I was privy to art in that sense all the time. And then my dad has a great love of books and has handed me books that he loved at various stages throughout his life.
So you always had literature around you.
So that was there, and that was a conversation that I always had with them. And then, because I lived on a hill in Ireland,
Where?
County Cork, down south, Dunscully Left it's called, and there were no real neighbours except for Con Keen, who was a lovely farmer, and the Murphys, who were a bit further down the road. Real names. The Murphys, they were lovely. But I read a lot. I hung out with my family, and I read a lot. You know, and I think those were two huge things, and it was really beautiful. So books have always been this love, this real love, and story's been a love. And so I don't know at what point it shifted from words being something that you take in to something that you then share or expel in some way. I can't remember that moment, but it would have happened in that time in some formative way.
Yeah. And so then you moved to Adelaide, but then there's another section I'm very interested about, and that is when you returned to Ireland and you became a drama teacher. At the age of 17?
Yeah, that's right.
How does a 17-year-old become a drama teacher in Ireland?
Well, I was teaching drama already, like Urban Myth was doing out into the community kind of courses, so I was doing little bits of, in a supported way, with an actual tutor as well. We'd then take a class of children who were pretty much my peers age-wise and do some teaching with them. But then the day after I finished my exams for Year 12 and was done with those educational years, I caught a plane to Europe, and I lived in Europe for a year, from 17 until 18, and had fun, crazy experiences, and lived in squats and
part?
England, Ireland, Germany, Spain, hitchhiking a lot. I learned how to hitchhike and really got into that. And
is that difficult?
no way. Oh god, it's a complex thing, I think, to choose your spot well. And then I was just so poor. So much of that time was spent being incredibly poor, and I was back in Skibbereen, which is the town that I was born in, literally born in. And there was a high school there, and I went to them in this really ballsy, stupid way and said, I'm a drama teacher in Australia, and a bit of a big deal, so I think I should, which was complete bollocks. Like I wasn't at all. And they said, okay, you can do some work with our classes. And I was teaching kids who were older than me. Sorry?
You told the porcupine.
Yeah, it was a bit of one. And so I did some teaching.
Still looking for you over there, by the way.
Posted them.
So you taught there?
So I taught there. And then I came back to Australia and said, I've done some teaching in Ireland. I can teach over here. So that was how I got my first work, really.
List your 52 commissioned plays.
Alphabetically.
Great, good. So then we're in Adelaide, and the phone rang. We're in Adelaide, the phone was answered, and then we moved to Tasmania.
Yeah.
How did we get to Tasmania?
Okay. 8.5 years ago, I went for a holiday because I had a broken heart and I thought I'd go wandering, and I flew to Tassie and I lived in a forest for a bit, like in a lovely place, not a wild man, that was in a little crafted building which served as a house, and I ate hot meals and everything. I'm just building this myth, which is
I'm enjoying it.
I wore a bear skin and I just
You called yourself Daniel Boone.
yeah. And then I hitched into Hobart. There was a comedy festival on. I used to be a stand-up, and I did some stand-up comedy, and I met somebody through that social group who said if I came back in 6 months I could do some drama teaching on the west coast of Tassie, right, in kind of marginalised communities, or with young people who didn't have that much access to different theatre experiences. And so I said, yes, great. And then I moved back, and in that time I fell in love with Essie, who's my wife, who's sitting in the back row, and definitely wants you all to turn and look at her. And then I had to convince her to move to Tassie with me.
And how hard was that? Was it easy or was it difficult?
She only let me ask her once a day, and we'd only been together for a month. And after 3 days she said yes, and she quit her job and moved to the island, and then a month later I proposed to her. So within 2 months, essentially, or 3 months.
So you really waste no time, do you? How old were you then?
That was 23.
23.
With all their stories, it was just so exciting.
Yep.
And the bear skin. Yeah.
So you travelled around
been
Europe.
8 years.
You taught.
Yep.
You started writing.
Started writing.
You go on to Adelaide, and you go on to Tassie, and you had your heart broken, and then you found love again, and then you married. So right, okay. So then, what happened? When did the plays? What was your first commissioned play? Which was that the gambling one?
Was the first commissioned,
yep.
And then I got a number of commissions with other youth theatre companies in South Australia, which was really generous. Of all these wonderful artistic directors, I was a really kind of unformed writer, and they took a big leap. And I think a lot of my career has been defined by those leaps from very generous people who have done that thing, which is amazing and wholly to be remembered, and set on camera for their knowledge. And then Brink Productions, Chris Drummond had been kind of hearing about writing that I've been doing around the place, and Brink Productions is an adult theatre company, or creates works for adults, by adults, and he commissioned me to translate Brecht's Drums in the Night, which is an early work of Brecht, and it became an early work of mine to translate it or adapt it. and I did a really full-on presumptuous reshaping of it, which was very naughty, but then I showed it to the Brecht estate and they were lovely and ticked it off so it could go on. And then that show also had a life with the Actors Gang, with Tim Robbins' company in LA, and so that kind of was a big jump to know that a work was going on in another country for me. And then I went to the Azatej Congress and Festival when it was held in Adelaide 4 years ago, and there was a work of mine on there, The Tragical Life of Cheese Boy, and that was seen and received well. And Wendy Harris, from Tutti Frutti in England gave me my first international commission, and that felt like a really big jump as well. And from then on, it's been pretty much all children's theatre. I still write occasional adult commissions, but primarily theatre for young audiences.
Which is my next question. So it's kind of really naturally taken a shift to theatre for young people, hasn't it?
Yeah.
How do you go when you write theatre for adults? I mean, you kind of flirt with that a bit.
Yeah.
And what is the difference between the two, when writing for adults and writing for young people?
In terms of the guiding, the protagonist in a work, that character which should act as the gateway for the audience, you know, empathetically, we get a sense of how this world might feel to somebody inside it through this character. I think when it's work for young people, it tends to be a younger person. So I drop the age of the protagonist, and I try to make experiences one which are kind of in some way reflective of a young person's life. It's presumptuous on my part, I'm not that much of a young person anymore, you know, but the intent is one of kind of, you know, making an 8-year-old the hero of that world and finding out what their slings and arrows might be. And with adult theatre, it's not that. You know, it's generally an adult character. So I would say, without, I mean, that's a really big, grandiose statement to make, but essentially that's the main change I make. Aside from that, I feel in terms of the territory that I'd explore, or the emotional shifts I'd go on, or the potential for brutality, or conflict, or taboo, or tension, I don't know that I'd change too much. I'd maybe change the way it's presented, but I have faith in the fact that a child audience and an adult audience can essentially go on the same journey. It's just about hearing it to make it a play for that audience.
Absolutely. And then, which brings me to, and I was going to look at but where I'm at now, which is you wrote a paper called The Taboo of Sadness in Theatre for Young People, for children, which is a wonderful, wonderful paper. And I think one of the things that we're doing at Finegan Gecko, and certainly I'm interested in, and what I love about children's authors and artists like Sean Tan, is they do not shy away from the bigger themes, or themes that we would probably, you know, hide our children from. And I think they put it in a format, and as you do, that makes it accessible for young people. And it is really designed to open up a conversation, which I think is important, and it's creating a dialogue with their parents. It's also fun, and it's also magical and amazing, and it's loaded with imagination. Why do you think there is that fear about putting things such as losing a parent, such as death or grief, or such as when we did the Red Tree, there was some concerns because it is about a young girl that suffers anxiety and depression. And people think, well, no child should feel that, or does feel that. Well, they do. So why is it people are nervous about exposing their young people to?
Well, I think it's the word that the should, you know, no child should experience that, and that's right, and inherently as adults our intent, you know, should be that children should be protected from any of that. I mean, that is the wish, that is the societal wish, and that's a good wish, and that's a well-founded one. It doesn't mean that that's the reality. And the fact that a child does have an experiential awareness of, in some form, every emotion, I believe. Yes, the situation might be wholly different for each person, just as if I was making a show for an adult audience, I wouldn't say this specific event denotes a specific moment in every one of your lives. Exactly. It's a mirror for an experience you had, because that's a huge call, and it's untrue. So you just kind of create allegories. You place things on a stage in front of an audience which they might be able to recognise some emotional aspect of something that they know. And that can be hard for the people who buy work or give permission for children to go to work to get their heads around. I think that's where the fear comes from, because you're not selling it to a child, you're selling it to the teacher of a child or the parent of a child who will make the decision to bring them to the piece of theatre, and that's got to be acknowledged. And you've also got to make that parent or teacher feel to some extent safe. I believe that's fair enough, you know, because I spoke with my mum about this. She's a childcare worker and has been for a long time, and she says, I would rather, you know, send a child to a work which won't have to put them through all those trials and tribulations. You know, that's my innate wish as a parent and as a teacher and as somebody who cares for children, and I completely get that. But I think in the same way that when adults choose to go to a piece of theatre, some days we say, I just feel like entertainment. And I just want to laugh, and that's brilliant, and I've seen Spider-Man, and that was fun. And then other times, you know, I want to kind of dig through some pathos-heavy stuff, because that feels nice too, and that's cathartic, and I need to have a tangible yet safe way that I can see emotional experiences that I know, and have them presented with another person as the centre piece, and see how they deal with it. And then subconsciously have a conversation about how I might have dealt with that, or where the points of reference lie. And that's an interesting thing, and I think it's an empowering thing. To be privy to emotions that scare us, but in a form that is safe, is good. It's cathartic, and psychologically it's empowering. And I think that children deserve that, as I believe you do, with the work that you're making. So,
what are the ingredients you put in when you come up with a theme or a topic to write a show? So let's look at This Girl Laughs, This Girl Cries, This Girl Does Nothing.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with the loss of a parent, a death of a parent. Then a new mother arrives, and the acceptance of that new mother, and then the children being abandoned. They're huge, huge themes. So when you look at those and you have these block kind of themes, you go, these are going to be explored, and then I'll separate the girls and take on this incredible journey. What are the ingredients you think make a really good play for young people to allow, to not be patronising? I don't have those patronising tones. It's not all colour and movement, but...
Yeah. I think so. This play is interesting because it very intentionally works on a lot of the tropes that exist in fairy tales. So it's something we know so well, and parents do tend to go missing in this way, or they disavow children in this way, and essentially what it does, and what I try to do with most of my plays, is remove the parents early so that the children can truly become the heroes of the work. Because if we're seeing adults on stage with the children, we will subconsciously in our minds go, save the day for them, look after them, you know, what should be done. So you just have to get them out of the equation. And sometimes I do horrible things to them, and I throw them off cliffs, and they get and sometimes, you know, they're in the other room having a cup of tea. And both are just as equivalent. If the child feels that I am by myself, this issue has befallen me, and it's to me to decide what I should do. And as long as that's set in motion, then I'm interested. Then they can truly be a hero, because they can succeed or they can fail, and that's exciting. So, so yeah, that's essentially the role of that, is just to put them at the centre of the work, and then, yeah, I want to create peaks and troughs in the work. So if you're talking about other things that make up the play, there have to be true hardships, things that even we as adults would look at and go, were I faced with that, that would be truly problematic to deal with. And then other things that are light and lyrical and give hope, because every night is a dawn, you know, and we've got to remember those bits. And as I say in this play, winter is only to make us look back and remember when times are warmer, or to look forward and to know when they'll be warm again. That's the point of winter, that life has befores and afters, and that's good when the present feels a bit shitty.
But see, the way you're talking now, do you have an 80-year-old person in a cupboard somewhere that you go and talk to? Because really, this is dialogue that it comes from a lifetime of experiences. So you're 31. And some of the beautiful words and sentences and the things that are created and the problem solving and the experience, it's so rich in your plays. I mean, it's outstanding for me, and it's so admirable. And it's one of the things I think is why you have 52/53 commissioned plays.
But, well, I would argue or kind of put forward that I've heard some of the most world-expanding, eye-opening sentences of truth, observations made by children, just as I've heard them made by 80-year-olds in cupboards, which we won't discuss. But, you know, I would not prescribe an age when one might attain that kind of thing, you know, and there are vast tracts of my life where I've said completely nonsensical bollocks that nobody would care about. It's just, I'm really lucky in that my point of work is I get to self-edit and I get to choose exactly what I'll show, and then that's what, you know, gets put forward. I mean, that's the indulgent joy of the writer, that I get to kind of choose what I will show to people. And so, yeah, I would posit that everybody has experienced pretty much everything emotionally from a certain very young age, and then yeah, it's just the game of sharing it, and sharing is a beautiful thing.